Do you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001? The world stood still, people were in shock, and the impossible unfolded before our eyes. In this video, we will dive into the details of the largest terrorist attack in modern history, exploring the events that forever changed the course of the 21st century. Have you ever wondered how a single day can transform the world? How the actions of a few can impact millions? We'll analyze the crucial minutes of that day, understand the motivations behind the attack, and most importantly, discover what we can learn from this tragedy to prevent something similar from happening again. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. To grasp the devastating impact of September 11th, it's essential to go back in time and analyze the global context leading up to the attack. In the years before, the world was undergoing significant political and social transformations. The end of the Cold War in 1991 left the United States as the sole global superpower, but this new balance of power also brought new challenges and enemies. During the 1990s, the Middle East became a hotspot for intense conflicts, many of which were deeply rooted in religious, ethnic, and political rivalries. The United States, with its strategic interests in the region, was deeply involved, especially in the Persian Gulf. The Gulf War in 1991 solidified the American military presence in the region, fueling resentment among some local groups who saw this intervention as a violation of their sovereignty and culture. It was in this context that Al-Qaeda emerged, a terrorist organization led by Osama bin Laden, committed to fighting Western presence in the Muslim world. Bin Laden, coming from a wealthy Saudi family, channeled his hatred towards the United States, partly in response to the American military presence in Saudi Arabia, a sacred site in Islam, and the U.S. foreign policy that he believed oppressed Muslim peoples. Al-Qaeda didn't arise out of nowhere. It was the result of years of accumulated frustration and radicalization, fueled by both local and global conflicts. Bin Laden and his followers believed they were engaged in a holy war to protect Islam from the corrupting influences of the West. This sentiment was further exacerbated by American support for Israel in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, another point of tension that inflamed emotions in the region. Throughout the 1990s, Al-Qaeda began planning attacks that could have a massive impact and send a clear message to the world. September 11th was the culmination of this strategy, a carefully planned attack aimed not only at symbolic targets like the World Trade Center and the Pentagon but also at the heart of American pride and security. Understanding this background is crucial to comprehend why this attack happened and how it managed to change the course of world history so dramatically. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the world woke up to a tragedy no one could have imagined. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. The impact left a gaping wound in the tower, with fire and smoke quickly spreading through the upper floors. TV broadcasts interrupted their programming, and the entire world began to watch, in real time, what seemed like a horrific accident. But reality proved even darker. At 9:03 a.m., just 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 collided with the South Tower, confirming the worst fears: the United States was under attack. The devastating explosion and the sight of two iconic landmarks engulfed in flames sent panic not only through New York but across the entire country and beyond. People in the streets looked up at the sky, stunned, trying to process what they were witnessing. At 9:37 a.m., while the world's eyes were focused on New York, another hijacked plane, American Airlines Flight 77, struck the Pentagon, the nerve center of U.S. military operations in Washington, D.C. This attack symbolized a direct threat to the heart of American military power, amplifying fear and confusion across the nation. The last of the four planes, United Airlines Flight 93, never reached its intended target. Thanks to the bravery of the passengers who fought back against the hijackers, the plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m., before it could hit an even more devastating target, possibly the White House or the Capitol. These heroic passengers sacrificed their lives to prevent further destruction, a story that resonated with profound courage and tragedy. The moments following these attacks were pure chaos. Thousands of people were trying to flee the burning towers, while firefighters and rescue teams rushed towards the danger. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed, generating a cloud of dust and debris that engulfed the surrounding streets. The sight of one of the world's tallest buildings falling in a matter of seconds was a devastating blow to the psyche of everyone watching. The North Tower held out a little longer, but at 10:28 a.m., it too collapsed, leaving a void in the New York skyline and in the hearts of all who had witnessed the tragedy unfold. The visual impact of these towers falling, captured in countless videos and photos, became a symbol of shock, loss, and vulnerability. During these critical moments, testimonies from survivors and accounts from those present at the scene began to emerge. Their stories of desperate escapes, people helping strangers amid the devastation, and firefighters bravely climbing the towers they knew were on the brink of collapse, brought a human dimension to the unimaginable scale of the tragedy. Archival footage, amateur videos, and live broadcasts captured the horror of a day that will be forever remembered. Watching these recordings is a way to revisit the shock and pain, but it is also a means to honor the lives lost and the heroic actions of those who faced the unimaginable. This was the day that changed the world forever and left deep scars on all of us. The consequences of the September 11th attacks were felt immediately, both at the site and around the world. In the moments after the towers collapsed, New York rescue teams, composed of firefighters, police officers, and volunteers, mobilized to save as many lives as possible. Amid debris and smoke, these heroes risked their lives, facing extremely dangerous conditions to search for survivors. The chaos in the streets of Manhattan contrasted with the courage and determination of those who launched into the rescue amid the destruction. As rescue operations were underway, the response of the United States government was swift and decisive. President George W. Bush, who was on a school visit in Florida when the attacks happened, was immediately taken to a safe location, and hours later, he addressed the nation, promising justice and declaring that those responsible for the attacks would be hunted down and brought to justice. Security was heightened across the country, with warnings of potential new attacks, and the airspace was closed, with all commercial flights canceled or diverted, an unprecedented action in American history. The world also responded with a wave of shock and solidarity. Leaders from various nations expressed their support for the United States, while millions of people around the world gathered in vigils to mourn the victims. However, this solidarity was accompanied by a growing fear of new attacks, leading many countries to intensify their internal security measures. In the days that followed, financial markets experienced a significant downturn. The New York Stock Exchange remained closed for several days, and when it reopened, it recorded one of the largest drops in its history. Airlines, already affected by the airspace closure, faced a financial crisis that led to the bankruptcy of some and the restructuring of others. Air travel would never be the same, with new security regulations being implemented globally, including stricter inspections and restrictions on items allowed on board. The most significant response, however, was the United States declaration of war on terrorism. On September 20, 2001, in a historic speech to Congress, President Bush launched the War on Terror, a global military campaign aimed at dismantling terrorist organizations and preventing future attacks. Shortly thereafter, in October 2001, the United States, with the support of an international coalition, invaded Afghanistan, where the Taliban regime harbored Osama bin Laden and other members of al-Qaeda. The invasion marked the beginning of a war that would last 2 decades, with profound consequences for the Middle East and American foreign policy. The impact of September 11th resonated in all aspects of life, from politics and the economy to security and popular culture. It redefined global priorities, with a renewed emphasis on combating terrorism and protecting nations from invisible threats. The scars left by that day became a constant reminder of the fragility of security and the need for constant vigilance in an increasingly interconnected world. September 11th not only shook the world on that day but also shaped the 21st century in profound and lasting ways. One of the most significant changes was the transformation in the global approach to security. In the name of protection against terrorist threats, governments around the world implemented new policies that often raised questions about the delicate balance between freedom and security. Airport screenings were increased, digital surveillance expanded, and mass data collection became a common practice, sparking intense debates about privacy and civil rights. In U.S. foreign policy, the impact of September 11th was equally profound. The War on Terror launched the U.S. into a series of prolonged conflicts in the Middle East, beginning with the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 and later Iraq in 2003. These conflicts redefined U.S. military and diplomatic priorities, influencing how the nation relates to the rest of the world. Alliances were tested, new coalitions were formed, and the American view of global security became marked by a more interventionist and preventive stance. One of the most tangible responses to September 11th within the United States was the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, an agency that consolidated various government entities under a single command, with the goal of protecting American territory against future attacks. Along with the DHS came the implementation of surveillance policies that significantly expanded the government's power to monitor its own populations. The controversial Patriot Act, passed shortly after the attacks, allowed the government to access private information and conduct searches and seizures with fewer legal restrictions, fueling a debate that persists to this day about the limits of state power in times of crisis. The legacy of September 11th also reflects in how it continues to influence politics and society today. The emotional and psychological scars of that day are still present, especially among those who lost loved ones or were directly affected by the attacks. The collective trauma shaped a generation, with many still grappling with issues of security, identity, and the United States' place in the world. Moreover, September 11th permanently changed the global political discourse. Terrorism became a central concern in national security policies worldwide, and the fight against this threat has shaped the military and intelligence strategies of numerous nations. Immigration policies, attitudes towards refugees, and international relations have been strongly influenced by perceptions of threat and the need to prevent future attacks. When reflecting on the long-term impact of September 11th, we see that it wasn't just a tragic event but a turning point that redefined the course of modern history. The world we know today, with its complex networks of security, surveillance, and political alliances, is largely a product of that fateful day. And even decades later, the issues raised by September 11th, about security, freedom, and the nature of global power, continue to shape debates and decisions around the world. September 11th taught us profound lessons that still resonate today, more than 2 decades later. One of the main lessons is the fragility of security, even in nations considered invulnerable. The attack demonstrated that no border is impenetrable and that threats can arise in unexpected ways. This led to a global reassessment of security strategies, reinforcing the need for constant vigilance, international cooperation, and the ability to adapt to new forms of conflict. Another crucial lesson is the importance of addressing the roots of extremism to prevent future attacks. The tragedy of September 11th highlighted the need for a deeper understanding of the underlying causes of terrorism, such as poverty, oppression, and social injustices. To promote lasting peace, it's essential to invest in dialogue, education, and development, creating more just and resilient societies where violence does not find fertile ground to spread. Additionally, September 11th showed us how global events can have a direct and profound impact on individuals' lives around the world. The interconnectedness of the modern era means that crises in one country can have global repercussions, affecting economies, politics, and even the social fabric of other nations. This interdependence requires us to be more aware of our actions and decisions, recognizing that everyone's security and peace are intrinsically linked. Ultimately, the legacy of September 11th is a powerful reminder that to build a safer and more peaceful world, we must learn from the past, work together in the present, and maintain hope for the future. If this video brought new perspectives or emotions to you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you found the content relevant, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth discussions about the events that shape our world. Let's keep this conversation going and work towards a better future, together. See you in the next video.